The Wells Report returns in 30 seconds. North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. Greetings, my name is John David Wells. What do? We report the news, honestly and fairly. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point out both. We make commentary, but that's not news. That's debate and opinion. Opinion yours, opinion mine, and then we debate. News, analysis, commentary, and debate. This is the Wells Report for the first day of June, year of our Lord 2023. And somebody told me a while back that what you're supposed to do for good luck this month is to go rabbit, rabbit. Where did it come from? I mean, I'm not very superstitious in the first place. I have a couple of superstitions. But that one is rabbit, rabbit? Really? All right, so the comedy that is known as the Debt Limit Crisis is at least moving forward at some level. The House of Representatives passed it yesterday by a wide margin. This agreement struck by President Joe Biden and Speaker Kevin McCarthy being talked about on USA Today. This bill suspends the nation's debt ceiling and thus avoids a catastrophic default on the nation's debt with a package that also includes spending cuts passed by Republicans. So let me ask you this question. This news, as I say, I point out bias, catastrophic default. Catastrophic. Really. We're $31.7 trillion in debt. I heard a little while ago that somewhere toward the end of, say, for example, this election season into 2025, our national debt will be $35 trillion. That's not even real. That's not a real number. $35 trillion. What does this do? It adds to that figure. And we have to stop. Why don't we stop now? Well, because there are political careers on the line. And so what we have now is we're continuing to borrow money to pay our debts. That is unsustainable. By the way, the package does include spending cuts. The Fiscal Responsibility Act, which seems like something you'd see on a billboard in a vaudeville show, passed by a wide margin, 314 to 117. Strong majorities from both parties pushing the legislation past opposition from liberal Democrats and hardline conservative Republicans. The bill heads to the Senate. Majority Leader Chuck Schumer wants a vote tomorrow. Congress needs to send us an agreement to President Biden's desk before Monday, June 5th, or the government won't be able to pay bills coming due, says incompetent Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, who said last week, well, we could push it back to the 15th. Yeah, this is all kabuki theater. It's frustrating and it makes me angry. The outcome marks a major win for McCarthy, who overcame discontent from the right flank of his party and squeezed spending concessions out of the White House after President Biden initially refused to negotiate. Washington's spending addiction is both irresponsible and just wrong. I'll be honest, tonight's bill doesn't stop it, but for the first time, we begin to turn the ship. This, by the way, is the rhetoric coming out of Washington. You can see it pretty much with everybody that are Republican spokespersons. They say you can't do this all at once. You have to take one step at a time. How convenient. How convenient. I'm reasonably sure that probably what ought to happen is that we ought to commit ourselves as a nation to reducing the national debt of this nation to somewhere around, and this is going to sound really strange, $4 to $5 trillion. Alexander Hamilton said that a national debt was not exactly a bad thing because what it does is it reins in congressional spending. I don't think they're listening to one of the forebears of this nation. I just don't think so. What do you believe? Telephone number 817-379-2172, 817-379-2172. We sit here and we watch this kabuki theater unfold in front of us. Well, what are we going to do about it except pay the bill? What are we going to do? One of these geniuses going to come up with some idea of saving the day with some amazing plan that totally restructures United States debt. And then, of course, the mainstream media will say, my God, it's such a great thing. Everything's going to be just fine. And people are going to go, wait a minute. This happened to England in the 70s. This happened to England. They spent their way into a mess, and they just restructured the currency. More about that coming up a little bit later on. Kyle Clark says, good morning, JD, from Disneyland. You know, he used to work there. Yeah, he played Prince Charming. He rode a horse during the parades and everything. Awesome. I'm going to go in debt here. Good grief. Wonder if they have a hospital where I can sell one of my kidneys. Yeah, it's Disneyland is kind of an expensive place. You don't have a former employee's exemption or discount or anything? Really? Wow. Well, there you go. Anyway, good morning, Kyle. Let's see. John Rosado says, good morning. Gary Olivier says, good morning. Jesse says, good morning. She asks a simple question. Default? Yeah. I mean, I've defaulted. I bought a house in Florida. I put a lot of money in it. I mean, I put a lot of money into this house. Why? Well, because a veteran owned the house, got himself into financial trouble, and stood to lose his VA house benefits for life if he went belly up. So what ended up happening financially, belly up? So what ended up happening was I bought him out of his problem and sent him on his way, and I took over the VA loan so he could continue using his VA benefits. Then a divorce happened. You might be amazed about that. And somehow I got saddled with the house and everything else and ended up in a situation where I had to let them foreclose on it. And there was just no way to fix it. I had $80 at the end of the month. I mean, I between child support and all the other things, yeah. But I'm still here. Is my credit damaged? Yeah. Is my reputation damaged? Of course. Do I feel terrible about it? Yes, I do. But you know what else I feel? I'm sitting there. By the way, that was a resolution trust thing. Remember the Reagan thing? I got resolved. Anyway, let's just keep rolling. The circumstance works like this. We stand to have rough financial waters in the United States. That rough water headed our way, unless we can do something meaningful to actually do something about this mess, is going to disrupt not just the United States, but the world. And it's necessary to point out that every country on the planet has had very serious trouble financially. Every single one, including the United States. But the reason that people flock to the United States to protect their money is because of the solidity of our system. The fact that the United States of America is not some political, for Kyle Clark's benefit, amusement park. And if this nation defaults, chances are very likely it's going to default on things that we owe ourselves, not including the military, not including Social Security, not including Medicare, and not including all of that stuff. Now, my favorite way to handle the Social Security mess, which is one of the main drivers of this debt that we have, is to replace all the money that was paid to the United States government in Social Security taxes, to replace that with Treasury bonds, which forces the government of the United States into real responsibility. Just Treasury bonds. 5, 10, 15, 20, 30-year Treasury bonds. Because those Treasury bonds can be passed down to your children. And considering the fact that we now are spending $31.7 trillion of their money, I think that's probably a very good solution. People are going, whoa. Oh, man. Oh, that's a good idea. How come we don't do that? Well, because I'm not in Washington? Because there are not enough people listening to this broadcast? Little stuff like that? It's not actually my idea. George Bush, when he was the president of the United States, said, the average return at that time for Social Security on the money that was spent on it was about 1.25%. And he pointed out that Treasury bills were paying at that particular time, the yield was somewhere around 4%. Why don't we just do that? That was something that I voted for twice. And because of Bill Frist Republicans the first time, and just plain, well, actually the second time, because of 9/11 the first time and Bill Frist Republicans the second time, well, there you go. Yeah. Isaac Tate, virtue signaling this morning, says, I never default on my debt. I teach my kids to pay your debts immediately. Well, very good, Isaac. Good for you. You're just an amazing human being. You're just an amazing human being. I'm proud to know you. Yeah. I'll send you a pair of my boots. You can walk a mile or so in those. We'll see what you say after that. Anyway, so here we go. Washington's spending addiction is both irresponsible and just wrong. I'll be honest, tonight's bill doesn't stop it, but for the first time, we begin to turn the ship. More Democrat House members, 165, voted for the bill than Republicans, 149, despite the deal being negotiated by McCarthy. 71 Republicans voted against the bill, compared to 46 Democrats. The legislation would suspend the limit on how much the government can borrow until January 2025, conveniently right after the 2024 election. It would also keep non-defense discretionary spending, which does not include Social Security and Medicare, roughly flat for 2024, raise it by 1% in 2025. $30 billion in unspent coronavirus relief money would be rescinded. Billions of dollars in recently approved funding for the IRS to improve customer service and go after tax cheats would be redirected to other areas. Doggone it. You know what that's going to mean? That's going to mean that they're going to have to stop all that gun range construction at the local IRS office. Darn. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Hello. Greetings. I'm so glad to see you. Thank you very much for being with us today. It is the Wells Report. Let's see. Seems like YouTube isn't working. What happened to Facebook Live? Facebook Live? According to my very carefully crafted control center here, both of those are working. It's very strange. I don't know. Maybe I've upset YouTube again. Well, I'll go find out, and we'll find out. You're watching the Wells Report. Thanks very much for doing so. This on the first day of June, year of our Lord, 2023. What happens next with the debt limit bill? Well, it goes to the Senate. More about that in just a moment. This is the Wells Report, which will return in 3 minutes. This is the Wells Report, which will return in 2 minutes. You're listening to the Wells Report, which will return in 1 minute. The Wells Report returns in 30 seconds. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. So here we are with the debt limit Band-Aid being passed out of the House of Representatives. It's going to be tougher in the Senate because one senator in the Democrat-run chamber has the power to thwart the plan hatched by President Joe Biden and Speaker Kevin McCarthy. Let's just go ahead and continue to exploit the drama. Yeah. Even a small procedural motion could delay the deal's passage, which the White House and congressional leaders could warn would put financial markets and average Americans at risk. A default would trigger a recession, cost millions of jobs, and devastate retirement accounts. Like, all those things aren't at risk now with a $31.7 trillion national debt? Well, do these people think we're idiots? They must. They must honestly believe we are complete morons. It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Goodness gracious. 31.7 trillion. It's going to be 35 trillion at the end of the next election. What are you guys doing? What are you guys doing? This is going to run away. Would you please stop? Anyway, yes, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer of New York warned members during a floor speech there was no time for any funny business. I cannot stress enough, we have no margin for error. Either we proceed quickly and send this bipartisan agreement to the president's desk, or the federal government will default for the first time ever. But there are senators on both sides of the aisle who have taken the path or taken issue with parts of the Biden-McCarthy deal that would want to flex their influence even as the country tiptoes to an unprecedented financial cliff. Really? Who writes this stuff? You know, one of the things about sticking to the facts, when you stick to the facts, when you actually look for fact, the fluff and garbage surrounding all of these news stories really becomes tiresome. It's like, seriously? A financial cliff, a catastrophe, a debacle. Yeah, okay. You know, one of the things about that little adrenaline rush you get when you're scared snotless, you know, the next time they scare you snotless, it doesn't hit you quite as hard. And the time after that, and the time after that, and pretty soon you build up so many calluses on it, you go, first time ever default. Catastrophic. Okay, whatever. It's ridiculous. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, that's Minority Leader Mitch McConnell of Kentucky, tried to give Republican members cover when he praised the plan as the first step in bringing Democrats' restless spending to heel. That's right. We're not going to let them spend $4.5 trillion. We're going to only let them spend $2.5 trillion. It's the first step. Senator McConnell, they're still spending $2.5 trillion. What's the matter with you? And that's assuming that they don't absolutely run to the withdrawal window of the U.S. Bank of Taxpayer and start pulling money out like crazy people. Yeah. Well, there's no time for amendments. There's no time for that. We just got to pass this bill. That's right. We don't want anybody that has any kind of shred of sanity to stand up and go, hey, this is a problem. Right. Yeah, we got to just pass this thing, get it to the president's desk. That's right. It's fantastic. And then we'll have to sit there because the next bit of funny business might be, do you suppose the president still remembers how to sign his name? I mean, that could screw up the whole thing. Him not being able to sign his name might lead to the first default in American history. All right. You can stop wetting your pants now. They passed it. I'll see what happens next week. Or, yeah, I think they're going to try to pass it tomorrow in the Senate. We'll see. This is the Wells Report. Back with more coming up in just a moment. You're listening to the Wells Report, which will be back in 4 minutes. This is the Wells Report, which will return in 3 minutes. This is the Wells Report, which will return in 2 minutes. You're listening to the Wells Report, which will return in 1 minute. The Wells Report returns in 30 seconds. News, analysis, commentary, and debate. This is the Wells Report. Hello. I hope you're having a good time this morning. It's the first day of June. Grab it. Yeah. Looking at the chat room where people are weighing in on the Debt Limit Kabuki Theater. Let's see. Good morning. It's a crazy day today. No. Hi, Jenny. Love the word fort. Yeah, I love the word fort. But you can find something to spread on it that will make the thwart go away. I don't know what it is. I'm trying to find it. Let's see what else is going. Now they want to impeach McCarthy. Actually, they don't want to impeach McCarthy. They're rumbling about, oh my gosh, we're going to have a moment. We're going to have a motion to vacate the chair. Okay, whatever. Let's see. Don't worry about President Biden forgetting how to sign his name. They can fake it. They know how to fake his signature. Yeah, that's true. I'll say it once again. Thank you for JD for moving the button from the upper right-hand corner. Greatly appreciated. Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're welcome. There's supposed to be a logo over there. Why isn't it there? Hang on just a second here. I think I've there's a small little issue. What? Why would that be that way? I don't understand. I used to have a Wells Report logo right up there, and I don't know where it is now. It's gone. I probably didn't pay a bill or something. Fort. Oh, I thought it was intentional. No, it was intentional. I actually figured out a way to move the Wells Report logo to a place where it wasn't over the top of the chat room. But for some reason, it's not there. More work to do after the broadcast today. There you go. The logo is there on the side. On the slide? On the side. Where? I don't see it. I should be able to see it because I've got master control here. So there you go. President Obama's grand bargain would have cut $4 trillion, but Republicans declined because they did not want President Obama to have a victory before the election. How did that work out? You know what I've said, Isaac, over and over and over again. This is a political issue, not a Republican one, not a Democrat one. What I keep saying is that all Republicans do is try to minimize the damage of Democrat policy. That's all they do. They feel like it's their job. And that's one way to say it. They try to minimize the damage. Here's another way to say it. They enable Democrats to damage the nation by fighting to keep the damage to a minimum. Well, that's garbage. They're still voting for this stuff. It's idiotic, he says. This is the Wells Report. Let's see what else is going on. Speaking of removing or a motion to vacate the chair. Yeah, this is also something you need to listen to. Check this out from Fox News. House Freedom Caucus Chair Scott Perry dodged a question about where he stands on taking Speaker Kevin McCarthy's gavel away after the House passed the GOP leader's debt limit bill. The bill, forged from a compromise between McCarthy and President Biden, passed 314 to 117. And it saw a majority in both parties supporting the agreement, which also means the GOP demand for cutting non-defense discretionary spending over the past 2 years or the next 2 years. Republicans supported the bill by a 149 to 71 margin. Democrats supported it 165 to 46. It comes after conservative critics of the bill floated using the motion to abandon the deal that McCarthy struck with the right during his speakership vote, which only requires one House member to call a full chamber vote on whether to remove him from his current leadership role, known as a motion to vacate. Asked by Fox News about the measure after the vote, Perry said, "I'm not even, before getting into an elevator to go to the House floor." McCarthy himself dismissed concerns. Whatever. At this point, the Democrats just got $2.5 trillion worth of spending. Why would they want Kevin McCarthy out of the way? Why? No, leave him right there. Any Republican that votes against Kevin McCarthy's speakership would be immediately replaced by one or two Democrats. It's ridiculous. The idea had also been floated by Dan Bishop, who told Real America's Voice, "It's inescapable to me that there must be a motion to vacate the chair. This is a fundamental breach of the agreement that we reached in January." Ken Buck of Colorado, a Republican, told reporters McCarthy should be concerned about the threat of the motion to vacate. Buck quipped to Fox News after the vote, "I don't know, Democrats will probably vote for the speaker now because they voted for this bill more than the Republicans did." Duh. Yeah. "I'm not going to file a motion to vacate, but I think we're going to discuss it next week," which brings me to my point. Republicans are sitting there going, "My God, look at this mess. It's all Kevin McCarthy's fault, those dang Democrats. And we're going to do something about it. We're going to file a motion to vacate the chair. We're going to move Speaker McCarthy out of the speakership and get somebody in there that will essentially do nothing." But the thing about it is this. They'll never do it. Why won't they do it? Because they're politicians. They're never going to do this. Never. They're never going to do it. It is truly idiotic. Because Republicans talk a great game. For all the people like me that are sitting here going, "What are you doing? Stop, please." When all of us sit out here and watch all this stuff unfold, we now watch the Republicans going, "We hear you. And we're going to do something about it. We're we're going to file a motion to vacate the chair. And then somebody says, so where do you stand on vacating the chair? Well, I'm not going to even. And then the elevator doors close. Yeah, Republicans talk a great game, but they don't ever do anything. Wrong Republicans. Wrong Republicans. Okay, so the Freedom Caucus is saying, I didn't vote for this thing. I didn't vote for this thing. I'm not responsible for this thing. Yeah, okay. Where is the bill that says that the United States of America will indeed clean up the national debt mess and have it handled in the next 15 years? Where's that bill? I mean, it's not going to go anywhere in the United States Senate, and certainly the president wouldn't sign it, but where's the bill? Where is the National Debt Reduction Act? How come nobody's even bothered filing it? Has the Freedom Caucus filed it? No. And if they did file it, they'll say, we're putting the National Debt Reduction Act on the table right this minute. We're going to get it into that committee. And they're going to say, oh, listen, don't do anything about this. It's basically just political cover for us. So just ignore it. We're not really going to push for it or anything like that. We'll just, oh, good. Oh, by all means. There you go. Yeah. My God, there'll be a recession if we default on our debts. There'll be a recession. People will lose their jobs. Well, what happens if the entire economy crashes? What happens then? Because you guys didn't do anything about the national debt. Dopes. Louis Zapata says, politicians all use the same blanket to cover each other. Nice to see you back at it. Oh, well, it's good to be here, Louis. And I call him Zep. I was down on mission with Zep, and he's a musician. He's really good at it. Anyway, I was with him, and I, because of my neck surgeries and so on and so on, I gulped a hunk of coffee. Fortunately, it was black coffee, and choked and just blew it all over him. It's like I've been apologizing to him for years for it. I'm so sorry, Zep. So sorry. Let's see. Mr. Love 825 says, your comments about Republicans trying to minimize Democrat damage seems biased considering the fact the last Republican president added $7.7 trillion. That's something that he pounds on all the time. Love, it's like this. Where's the part of when I say it's Democrat damage? Where's the part that you miss when I say and Republicans enable it? Where is that? Can you please share that with me? That would be really, really cool if you would. I mean, I'd really appreciate it. It's like, okay, so Bush added nearly $5 trillion. Why can't they put the brakes on their own guy? Because they're politicians. That's why. By the way, in case you're wondering, that little thing called 9/11 is the basis for most of that spending. Because as soon as there was a crisis big enough, what happened? Politicians came together and expanded government $5 trillion worth. That's why we have this behemoth known as the Department of Homeland Security. It's ridiculous. The whole thing's ridiculous. The entire thing is ridiculous. Of course, I don't even know that I had a solution for that. When I was talking about that 22 years ago, I sat there and said, just expand the FBI budget. Can you imagine if I had been correct and actually they had followed my advice? Yeah. What would have happened then? Yeah, the DOJ and the way they handle things now, investigating people who speak up at school board meetings. Are you flipping kidding me? We have to look, there's only one way to do this. Okay? Everyone who is currently in the United States government, and a majority in the House of Representatives voted for the debt limit bill, and a majority of the Senate will vote for the debt limit bill. Every single one of them need to be voted out of office at our next opportunity. Now, there are a lot of good people up there. I know a lot of good people up there. Well, they can take a couple of years off and then reapply for their jobs. How about that? Because we have to send a message. We, the people of the United States, have to send a message to these people. We're going to have a $35 trillion national debt by the end of the next election. What are we doing? What are we allowing? I talk about the Republicans allowing Democrats to spend money. Democrats don't have any problem allowing the Republicans to spend money. There, I put that out there. They don't care about it. They think that it's nothing. Well, we're sitting on a $14 trillion a year economy. We can pay it off in 2 years. Good. Pay it off. Of course, you can't actually pay it off in 2 years, but you can certainly pay it off in 10. How about this? A couple of Senate terms. How about paying it off in 12 years? Where's that bill? Where is the bill coming out of the Congress of the United States saying that we will pay our debt down somewhere around $5 trillion of national debt in the next 12 years? Where's the bill? I mean, the Republicans ought to put it out there. Why? Because they know it probably won't go anywhere. That's a perfect Republican move. It's a perfect Republican move. Hey, we heard you, America. That's why we put the National Debt Reduction Act on the table. We even passed it in the House of Representatives. We sent it to the Senate. And we will put the evil Chuck Schumer on notice that he's got to pass it too. Chuck Schumer's office. May I speak with Senator Schumer? Yeah. Hey, Chuck. You know what we're doing, right? Yeah, just, figure out some way. Perfect. Hey, wait. What about golf at Congressional next Thursday? What do you think? Perfect. All right. Give my love to the wife and the dog and the kids and all that stuff. Yeah. Yeah, I will too. Take care. Bye-bye. We've got the wrong people up there. We have to start electing our neighbors. We have to stop electing politicians. It doesn't make any difference what party you're talking about. Just vote for somebody else. Vote for someone else. And if you've got somebody out there that you think is absolutely superb, they can reapply for their jobs in a couple of years. I'll even help them if they get the flipping message. In the meantime, you, your neighbor, somebody that you know and trust will be in Washington, D.C. to try to untangle and unmangle this thing. How about that? Does that sound like a good idea to you? Dang, it sounds such a good idea to me. It's just, but man, it's just, oh my. Yeah. Let's see. So, JD, what cut would you make to bring the debt down by 12 years? Glad you asked. Everybody who spends money in Washington, D.C., cut your budget by 10%. There you go. Everybody. There are other structural things, gigantic corporations not having to follow the Constitution, the refusal to break these companies up so that there's competition to drive down prices. There are a lot of other structural things. But you asked, I answered. Cut your budgets by 10%. I expect your report on my desk in the morning. This is the Wells Report, back with more in just a moment. This is the Wells Report, which will return in 2 minutes. You're listening to the Wells Report, which will return in 1 minute. The Wells Report returns in 30 seconds. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Looking at the chat room, John Ross says, dealing with the consequences is something politicians do not want to do. They don't want to mention austerity measures because it would put our nation in a depression now versus passing the buck down the line, which means they would be dealing with the consequences instead of leaving it for our kids. Okay. Actually, it wouldn't cause a depression. It would cause an upheaval. But America is too valuable to not just its own citizens, but the world for anybody to allow that to happen. It gets back to the international monetary system. Okay. So you really don't have to do that. Isaac Tate points out that Bill Clinton left office with a $200 billion surplus. Yeah. That was, by the way, one of those things where actually Republicans and Democrats worked together to make that happen. You know, Bill Clinton was the last as it currently stands. Bill Clinton was the last real Democrat president. Okay? This was, if you truly want to go back and see where the Democrat Party lost its way, right after the Clinton presidency. I didn't vote for him either time. But Bill Clinton was the last Democrat president. He was the last American president that was a Democrat. The rest of them, I don't know what they're doing. Speaking of presidential chicanery and perceived corruption, John Kirby was at the podium the other day, and somebody asked him a very poignant and, okay, maybe even important question. Here, let me show it to you.
53% of the public, including a fourth of Democrats, believe, quote, Joe Biden was involved with his son in an illegal influence peddling scheme. There's, of course, evidence that the president interacted with his relatives, associates from China, Mexico, Kazakhstan, Russia, and Ukraine. So what do you say to the majority of Americans who believe that the president is himself corrupt?
Wow. Can I take that question?
The president has spoken to this. The president has spoken to this, and there's nothing to these claims.
53% of the
Yeah,
public,
there's
including a
nothing
fourth of
to
Democrats,
these claims.
believe, quote,
There's nothing to these claims. Nothing to see here. Nothing burgerish. Yeah, there's nothing to these claims. Really? There's nothing to these claims? then what about these suspicious reports, these banking documents that talks about these suspicious economic and financial dealings? What about that? What about that? I mean, if there are no indications, then where did those come from? Yeah. John Ross says, I agree our current standing is important to us in the world, but our standing as the reserve currency is currently being challenged. Well, of course it's being challenged. You know, people are competitive. I mean, that's okay. Competition is the crucible of excellence. If the European Union could get its crap together and stop playing socialist, they would represent a very serious competition to the United States. If the politicians in Russia would stop trying to consolidate power and continue to enrich themselves and start working on that gigantic continent with all of those natural resources and start putting those things together with a workforce that is empowered by their own fortune and wealth, just like we do in America mostly, then they would create a gigantic competition for the United States. As long as Red China, with their incredible workforce and their amazing population, as long as those politicians stand in the way of the creativity of their entire population in favor of totalitarian rule, empowering themselves, enriching themselves, et cetera, they would also provide an amazing competition for the United States. But as long as they're a totalitarian socialist communist state, China is going to follow in the exact same footsteps as the old Soviet Union. You see, what they do in these countries is they quash the most important asset they have, the people of their nation, their creativity, their brilliance, their willingness to work, their understanding that there are patriots in all of the nations I've mentioned, patriots that want to see their country better. But in many of those nations, they find themselves in a situation where if they open their mouths and say, hey, we could do this better, somebody's political career is threatened, and off they go. Removing the impetus to progress. Because these governments expect people to not be human. They expect, hey, you need to understand that your betters are in charge. You just do what we tell you and everything will be just fine. Well, that's why China has to steal everything. That's why China has to steal everything and break international law in order to enrich itself to the point where it can barely function. Barely. Same story with Russia. They learned their lesson after the Soviet Union, but have they opened up their workforce to the brilliance of the Russian people? No. And why we are chasing that socialist totalitarian virus in our country right now is beyond me. This is the Wells Report. Back with hour number 2 in just a moment. Thanks for listening to the Wells Report, more of which continues in 6 minutes. You found the Wells Report, more of which continues in 5 minutes. You're listening to the Wells Report, which will be back in 4 minutes. This is the Wells Report, which will return in 3 minutes. This is the Wells Report, which will return in 2 minutes. You're listening to the Wells Report, which will return in 1 minute. The Wells Report returns in 30 seconds. North to south, coast to coast, around the world, this is the Wells Report. We report the news honestly and fairly. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We make commentary, not the news. Your opinion, my opinion. We come together to debate. News, analysis, commentary, and debate. This is the Wells Report. Lots of ways to get in touch with me. You can call me on the telephone, 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. We can talk on the telephone. We can communicate with each other on the chat room. See the very latest. There is an awful lot of faeculi about to hit the fan. Yeah, I can imagine. That's what Mike Renwee says. Anyway, let's see. Okay. Anyway, that being said, there are a lot of people that have commented on the last bit of. Oh, by the way, there's another way you can communicate with me. I'm sorry, I started moving on. The other way to communicate with me is to send me an email, thewellsreport@frontier.com. Make sure that you put in the subject line, capital letters would help, the platform that you are watching this on: Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Rumble, Patreon, etc. That way I know it's you, and I will respond to you directly. I will do that. The executive producer of this broadcast is Dirk Steele. He lives in Denver, Colorado. It's amazing that he and I can work so closely together with thousands of miles between us, but welcome to the future. He says, who said it best? The Who said it best back in 1971. Meet the new boss, same as the old boss. Biden in the White House, make Kevin McCarthy, their biatch. Yeah. Why did no one ask Janet Yellen, the Treasury Secretary, to show her work? What exactly are the mathematics behind crying default pinned to two different dates? That is a question that I have asked over and over and over. It is a political game, and it's ridiculous, and it's our fault. We send the wrong people to run our nation. They've proven it. How much more proof do you need to vote for someone else? How much more proof do you need? There's a little kid. We do something on the Wells Report called the Smart Alecky Little Kid Update. And today we go to Massachusetts for the Smart Alecky Little Kid. He's a 7th grader. And his name is Liam Morrison. He's 12 years old. He and his parents are suing Nichols Middle School for violating his First Amendment rights. This is great. One 12-year-old's lawsuit against his school for allegedly violating his First Amendment rights has landed in federal district court. He was prohibited by his school from wearing a T-shirt that said, quote, "There are only two genders," unquote. Yeah. The lawyers, actually the Alliance Defending Freedom, the ADF legal counsel, by the way, if you want to send some money to try to continue the destruction of the left agenda for this nation, the Alliance Defending Freedom might be a good place for you to send that cash. The legal counsel, Logan Spina, told Fox News, Liam's suing for the right to do what every other student in his school currently has the right to do, which is respectfully express their own view on a matter of enormous public concern. What is the relationship between sex and gender? Attorneys with Alliance Defending Freedom and Massachusetts Family Institute, another place where you might want to send some money, filed a federal lawsuit last month against Nicholas Middle School officials and the town of Middleborough, Massachusetts, on behalf of Liam Morrison, a 7th grader who was forbidden to wear a T-shirt at school that reads "There are only two genders." Yesterday, in a hearing before the U.S. District Court for the District of Massachusetts in Boston, there was a denial of Morris's attorney's request for a temporary injunction, a restraining order which would have suspended the school's ability to prohibit Morrison from expressing his views about gender before the court issued its final decision. In March, shortly after arriving to school wearing the "Only Two Genders" T-shirt, Morrison was pulled out of class by the school's principal and a counselor and told that he must remove the shirt in order to be able to return to class. Morrison declined. His father came and picked him up and took him home. Another perfect advertisement for homeschooling. After NMS told Morrison's family and legal counsel it would continue to prohibit Morrison from wearing the shirt, the seventh grader wore "There Are Censored Genders" t-shirt to school in response and was told to take it off almost immediately. Morrison said his school often expresses messages relating to issues of gender identity and sexual orientation, including hanging progress pride flags and posters on transgender identities. While the school encourages students to express views that are consistent with its own ideological view, Spina said, quote, "It's banning Liam from expressing his own views respectfully, which are that there are only two genders. The school has other rules on what students can wear, and those are being allowed to enforce, and that they are allowed to enforce. Liam's not asking to literally wear whatever he wants, but he's asking to do what other students already are allowed to do, which is express their views on a topic in a non-disruptive manner. No matter what you think about the gender issue, it's pretty remarkable that a school can punish a student for protesting censorship in America today. They claim that because Liam's message is not inclusive, they can exclude it. What they don't account for is how their own speech and all the other speech they already permit impacts Liam and his beliefs and sensibilities. It completely excludes him, but for some reason, that doesn't seem to count. That's because schools are less a place of fact-finding and fact-teaching and are now places for political indoctrination. Disastrous. The better rule is one that protects everyone. The First Amendment does not change depending on whether your view is popular or not. Another hearing is scheduled for the 13th. Spina is hopeful a decision will be made before the end of the school year, June 26th, and hopefully one that protects Liam's constitutional rights. If the court rules against Morrison, Spina said the ADF will appeal the case to a higher court. Yeah, and they should. They absolutely should. And so, the assault on the Bill of Rights continues. I remember when Colton was of school age. I walked into his school and saw some pictures of presidents on the wall. And I looked at them and I saw George Washington and I saw Abraham Lincoln and I believe it was Jimmy Carter. And I saw Bill Clinton and I saw President Obama. But you know what? I didn't see Ronald Reagan. I didn't see George Bush. Why? Why? Because the message is clear. These are our schools. We will impact your children with our political beliefs. I even asked because I'm kind of that way. And the looks were comical. No words were spoken. They just, all that stuff. And I'm going, really? Where's Ronald Reagan? Where's George W. Bush? Non-persons, I suppose. And so you're saying, of all the things that the left would fight against in the United States of America, the First Amendment, really? Why do they fight against the First Amendment? Well, because they've made progress in fighting the Second Amendment. The words "shall not be infringed" are actually words that shall not be recognized. And so what ended up happening is that since the Constitution of the United States is in the way of politics and the greater good, I guess, we have to figure out some way of eroding it. And what better place to do that is than with our children? Yeah, if they're afraid to say anything, well, okay. Then they move their agenda forward. But then again, what about what the kids are thinking? What about that? Well, that's the next thing we have to work on. Yeah, as Headmaster Orwell steps into our public school system and stays there. You know, it's like dueling with an unarmed man. It's like dueling with an unarmed man. When you look at public schools in the United States and see that they are in deep, deep trouble, that more and more Americans reject the public school indoctrination system, the political education of our children, and make other arrangements. Oh, yeah, they worked as hard as they possibly could to diminish these kids. The United States military, for a time, I don't know whether it's still there, but I can check, actually had a quota for children that were homeschooled. They could only have so many. Really? Doesn't that send shivers up and down your spine at some level? Seriously? I mean, what are we doing? Isaac Tate, who's a public school teacher, says there's no public school indoctrination. Okay, let me ask this question. For those people in the chat room and everywhere else, is there political indoctrination in our public schools? Yes or no? And tell me why. 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. Just right-wing propaganda used to cancel real education. Oh, really? What real education are you talking about? How come there's not a picture of Ronald Reagan or George W. Bush in your school, Isaac? What is it? I'm not asking, he says, cite the cases, bring evidence. Okay. Where do you want me to start? The DOJ investigating parents at school board meetings? Is that what you want? Is that where you want me to start? That's all I need to say. That's all I need to say. How do I know there isn't a picture of Ronald Reagan or George W. Bush up in the school where you teach? I'll tell you how I know. It's a public school. Well, why don't you send me a picture of it? You know, just go to that wall in the school office, the front office, where all the pictures of the presidents are hanging. Show me a picture. I will put it up on that screen right there. That screen right here. I'll put it up right here on this screen. And I'll say, gosh, got it wrong. Yeah. These are parents who made threats against school officials. What threats were those, Isaac? That they would vote them out of office at the next opportunity? Yeah, you see, it's dueling with an unarmed person. There's just too many things. And I'll just do it this way. I'll just do it this way. Do you believe public schools in the United States are centers for political indoctrination of our children? 817-379-2172, 817-379-2172. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Coming up in just a couple of seconds, we've already talked about the First Amendment. How about the Second Amendment? And it's good news this time for a change. And I'll have that for you coming up in just a couple of moments. This is the Wells Report. John David Wells at your service. I'll be back with more in just a moment. This is the Wells Report, which will return in 3 minutes. This is the Wells Report, which will return in 2 minutes. You're listening to the Wells Report, which will return in 1 minute. The Wells Report returns in 30 seconds. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. We report the news here, honestly and fairly. Hope you like it. A federal judge in Texas has temporarily blocked the Biden administration's new rules on pistols with stabilizing braces in response to a lawsuit from gun rights activists. Judge Drew B. Tipton of the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of Texas granted a preliminary injunction against the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, partially preventing the agency from enforcing its new stabilizing brace rule. This is kind of a big deal where I work. I work at Defender Outdoors. I couldn't just sit here doing nothing except the Wells Report, so I got a job. It's great. I have a wonderful time there, defending the Constitution and Bill of Rights, one Texan at a time. Yeah, that's Defender Outdoors. It's a great firearms training center, retail store, and firing range. It's magnificent. And we talk a lot about this pistol brace ruling. By the way, the order came on a deadline before the rule goes into effect in response to a lawsuit filed by the Gun Owners of America, the Gun Owners Foundation, and the state of Texas. Tipton's order follows it follows a ruling by the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals in a similar case that enjoined the ATF from enforcing the rule against plaintiffs, including customers of Maximum Defense Industries, a pistol stabilizing brace manufacturer, and the Firearms Policy Coalition. The decision came days before a deadline for individuals to register their pistol braces with the ATF, destroy them, or remove the accessories from their weapons. Those who do not comply with the regulation by May 31st will be forced to pay a fee and could pay up to or have to face up to 10 years imprisonment or a $10,000 fine or both. Seriously? By the way, remember bump stocks? Yeah, that rule is no longer in effect. Pistol braces, on the other hand, well, still alive, but now in the court system. The critical difference between the two cases, the one in the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals and the one in Texas, is the party to the lawsuit, former Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, who is still the Attorney General of the state of Texas, by the way. He is suspended because he's been impeached. He filed a motion for a preliminary injunction against the ATF earlier this month, arguing the pistol brace rule will inflict compliance costs on Texas police, who own previously legal handguns with stabilizing braces now must expand resources to register those weapons. Judge Tipton agreed, found that Texas established a standing to sue the ATF has sufficiently shown that it will suffer irreparable harm, absent a preliminary injunction enjoining the enforcement of the final rule. The stabilizing brace was introduced as part of the comprehensive gun crime strategy that President Biden announced in April of 2021. In response to a massacre at a grocery store in Boulder, Colorado, a gunman used a firearm with a stabilizing brace to kill 10 people. In 2019, another mass murderer used a stabilizing brace in shooting a Dayton, Ohio area that killed 9 people. ATF defines stabilizing braces as an accessory that provides a surface area that allows the weapon to be fired from the shoulder, so long as other factors indicate the firearm is designed, made, intended to be fired from the shoulder. ATF's rule, which was finalized January 13th, categorizes pistols with attached stabilizing braces as short-barreled rifles, which are heavily regulated by Congress because they're both accurate and concealable. So are pistols. The short-barreled rifle idea, it's craziness. It's absolutely craziness. I mean, it's like, honestly, a short-barreled rifle is still much larger than a handgun. Most weapons violence is with handguns, not these pistols, these so-called pistols, and certainly not with short-barreled rifles. It's absolutely ridiculous. In my humble opinion, just my opinion, this is the Wells Report, back with more coming up in just a couple of moments as we bring you the news and the issues of the day, the commentary, analysis, and debate, which is what we do on the Wells Report. We'll be back with more of that in just a moment. You're listening to the Wells Report, which will be back in 4 minutes. This is the Wells Report, which will return in 3 minutes. This is the Wells Report, which will return in 2 minutes. You're listening to the Wells Report, which will return in 1 minute. The Wells Report returns in 30 seconds. News, analysis, commentary, and debate. Welcome to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Thanks very much for being with us. Looking at the chat room, let's see. What do we got here? Made threats against you. I posted a link. I gave you quotes. Yeah, whatever. So, we were talking a little bit about how the DOJ investigated parents from one end of the country to the other for stepping up in school board meetings. And one of our guys said, well, wait a minute. They made threats. How many people made threats? And by the way, which is a bigger threat? Somebody saying something stupid in a school board meeting? An infinitesimal amount of people doing that? Or the DOJ investigating over 20,000 parents, which is more dangerous, which is a bigger problem? Simple questions. Yeah, let's see what else. Okay, glad that's over with. Yes, let's talk a little bit about something that isn't quite over with because, well, once you get a taste of being the center of attention, it's really, really hard to turn away. Oh, okay, whatever. Why does Siri talk to me? Siri, stop. Okay, doesn't work. Isn't that funny? Speaking of people listening in on your conversation. Spooky ooky, don't you think? Anyway, let's move on. Former FBI Director James Comey is not mincing words in his reaction to the special counsel report by John Durham on the FBI investigation into Donald Trump's 2016 campaign. Quote, there's nothing new in that report about the FBI, no new facts, unquote. Yeah. It's sort of like people looking at, I don't know, let's see. Some of the most arch criminals in the entire flipping world committing murder. People do investigations about those particular murders, the heinousness of them, and so on and so forth. Well, there's no new facts. So, big deal. The facts are that the FBI violated the Constitution of the United States. They lied to the FISA court. They altered evidence. All under the directorship of James Comey. No, there may not be new facts. They're just reinforcements of horrifyingly terrible ones. James Comey, Yep. The 306-page report by the Justice Department Special Counsel John Durham refocused negative attention on one of the most politically significant investigations in FBI history. This, by the way, from KTLA Television, Channel 5 in LA. The probe into whether Trump's 2016 presidential campaign conspired with Russia to tip the outcome of the election. The findings were not flattering for the FBI. Durham asserted it rushed into the investigation without adequate basis, routinely ignored or rationalized evidence to undercut its premise. The report catalogs a series of errors. Many were already documented years ago by a separate Justice Department Inspector General report, which was also ignored. The FBI says it's taken several dozen corrective steps on its own. Yeah, we robbed the bank, but what we've done is we gave the money back, and therefore no crime. And then Comey said this, quote, Durham, got his analysis and his take on things, but after all this time, there's nothing new. So my reaction, honestly, is an enormous waste of time and taxpayer money to give us a nothing burger. Okay, what about the Mueller investigation? Sir. Comey made his comments in a wide-ranging conversation with Frank Buckley that will air this weekend on KTLA, will be released next Wednesday on the Frank Buckley Interviews podcast. Durham is due to appear June 20th in a closed-door session with the House Intelligence Committee. Will testify public following the following day before the House Judiciary Committee. We will be covering that live on the Wells Report. Yeah. They'll be discussing all manner of things, including whistleblowers, et cetera, et cetera. And the best part about that is that there will be Democrats in the room to be able to, what? Trash John Durham and his report. And with every snarky, silly comment that they make, they only point themselves to Robert Mueller and his report. But for some reason, well, that's old news. Yeah, the Mueller report, yeah, whatever. Yeah, whatever. But this, well, we're going to take care of this now. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's called hypocrisy. It's called hypocrisy. In these interviews, and he's written a novel. He's written a fiction. He's now a fiction writer, a self-described fiction writer, which is, well, pretty good because his FBI was responsible for a great deal of fiction writing, especially before the FISA court. Former FBI director quipped Tuesday he hasn't spent much time thinking about the potential policy questions of Donald Trump's re-election candidacy because he's just a fiction writer. Interviewing on MSNBC's Deadline White House, Nicole Wallace, in a promotion of his debut crime novel, Central Park West. Hang on a minute here. Let me see if this is somebody. Yeah. No. Okay. I'll have to call him later. I'll have to call him back. That's just the way that works sometimes. Anyway, Central Park West, it draws on his professional experience. So obviously in this new crime novel, there's going to be something about, I don't know, how to lie to a court and be able to stay out of prison. And then there are other people that are talking. Comey weighed in on the ramifications of the twice impeached former president and said that he, the president, former President Donald Trump, is a serious threat to the rule of law and a cult leader. A serious threat to the rule of law? Is James Comey a serious threat to the rule of law? Yes or no? You tell me. He represents a serious threat to the rule of law in this country. Anyone with eyes can see that. For someone who promises to do things that are antithetical to a constitution-based rule of law society, I think he threatens that society. The stakes, if he becomes a candidate, will be extraordinarily high. Really? Seriously? Former FBI Director James Comey's warning, this from Fox News, from former President Donald Trump, is purportedly a serious threat to American justice, is an example of ex-agency heads monetizing their government service, according to Senate Intelligence Committee Vice Chairman Marco Rubio. Rubio said Comey and ex-officials like him have done more to damage the intelligence and federal law enforcement community than any foreign power ever could. Quote, here's what's more important than that. It's a revolving door thing. When you get to the end of your government service and you realize everybody tells you it's obvious, you want to be in corporate boards, you want to be on the speaker circuit, you want to sell books, an analyst of some of these news stations, you have to do things. These are things that we need you to do on your way out to cleanse yourself and be put on TV as an expert. So that's why over and over again, you see people doing that, whether it's generals who are about to retire or who are retired, going woke, or whether it's FBI directors. This is how you get hired. This is how you make money. This is how you monetize your previous government service. In a recent interview with Anderson Cooper, Comey claimed a second term of Trump in the White House would serve as a very serious threat to the rule of law. He, in his time as director of the FBI, was a serious and continues to be a serious threat to the rule of law. And yet he's trying to deflect by pointing at President Trump, who is not a serious threat to the rule of law. He's a president of the United States chosen by the people. That's it. That's all there is. Comey also blamed President Trump for making the FBI out to be a threat within right-wing circles, denying it's a leftist cabal out to destroy the GOP. Oh, no, I don't agree with that. I mean, I actually agree with Comey. He says that he denies it's a leftist cabal out to destroy the GOP. And I agree with him on that statement. It's a leftist cabal out to destroy the United States of America. On Jesse Watters' Primetime on Fox News, Rubio largely rejected Comey's premises, saying the FBI is indeed an important national security agency that's rank-and-file agents do brave and important work combating threats like terrorism, child predation, and other high crimes. But you've got a leadership who have historically, not just there, but in other agencies as well, that are looking for the next payday when they leave government service. And to do that, you've got to be invited to the right-wing parties and be invited to the members of polite society. And to do that, you have to be anti-Republican and especially anti-Trump. Rubio also said it was troublesome the same former top officials are simultaneously able to lend their credibility to political activities like the letter signed by 51 current or former officials disputing the veracity of Hunter Biden's laptop. Quote, you know what happened as a result of that? A total news blackout on what we know to be a very legitimate news story. The information on the laptop was real, but not part of the debate in October of 2020 because every major news outlet, Twitter, Facebook, refused to allow it to be disseminated or discussed. They blocked it out. The letter was a big part of it. It was censorship. It was a violation of the First Amendment of the Constitution. These former officials, or even some officials that are still working, they can say whatever they want to because the First Amendment protects them too. But once again, at the end of the day, these people violated the constitutional rights of a sitting president. Unapologetically. They have not been held to account. They have not even been forced to actually explain themselves. Except on CNN and MSNBC and, yeah, Fox News from time to time. But will James Comey appear on Fox News and actually answer real questions? Probably not. Why? Why is that? Is it because James Comey is smarter than that and realizes that he shouldn't walk into the lion's den? No, that's not it. That's not it at all. Because Fox News doesn't want President Trump to get a second term either. And they realize is that if they ask James Comey tough questions, that will likely provide the leverage, or at least some leverage, in the re-election of President Trump. And they don't want that. They want to get back to the simple, straightforward Republicans as the little bitty brother of the Democrat Party and get back to politics as usual because it's easier. It's actually easier to do that because it's the same story over and over and over again. News stories like, well, the FBI violated the constitutional rights. Violated the Constitution. Let's just keep it simple. Violated the Constitution of the United States. Yeah. That's all you need to know. The premier federal law enforcement agency in the United States violated the Constitution. Over and over and over. Violated the Bill of Rights. over and over and over. The DOJ doesn't go after that. They go after parents at school board meetings. Yeah. This is disastrous. Absolutely disastrous. Someone says anybody that was part of the Russian collusion conspiracy should be treated as a traitor, especially HRC, Hillary Rodham Clinton. And by the way, someone else says, didn't the Comey investigation into Hillary weeks before the 2016 election had an impact on her chance to win? I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think the American people wanted to listen to Hillary Clinton tell them how stupid they were for the next 4 years. That's basically what it is. The unlikable thing, yeah, that's what it was. Besides, James Comey stood up in front of the entire nation, violated the chain of command with the DOJ, stood up there and said Hillary Clinton did not intend to break the law, which, by the way, was the Espionage Act. The specification of that Espionage Act that she broke didn't require intent. He knew that, or at least should have known that. But he just said, nah, Hillary was just stupid. And did anybody step up and say, James Comey says that Hillary Rodham Clinton is stupid? No. No, they just sat there and said, Hillary just made a mistake. It's no big deal. I mean, she was the Secretary of State. Foreign intelligence services had penetrated that server. And we know that's true because she did everything she possibly could to destroy it. And based on how the FBI handled Hunter Biden's laptop, we can also be assured that which was on the hard drives of that server are probably sitting somewhere in an evidentiary box somewhere in the FBI warehouses near them and being completely ignored. I'm pretty sure that if you had a server with material on it that was, a violation of the Espionage Act, they'd figure out a way to get that data off of it. But you're not Hillary Rodham Clinton. And hopefully you're not as stupid as Hillary Rodham Clinton, so that you don't have to worry about an FBI director standing up in front of the entire nation and saying that you're a moron. Yeah. This is the Wells Report. John David Wells at your service. Thanks very much for being a part of our broadcast. Telephone number 817-379-2172. Back with more in just a moment. This is the Wells Report, which will return in 2 minutes. You're listening to The Wells Report, which will return in 1 minute. The Wells Report returns in 30 seconds. This is me talking with the microphone turned down. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Telephone number 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. We can keep calling them stupid all we want to, but they're running the country now. And by the way, who are those people actually running the country? Exactly what do we do about it? And how do we fix it? How do we do that? Yeah. Well, we're going to have to vote, and we're going to have to follow those votes all the way to the tabulation room and beyond. And how do we do that? Well, that might be a challenge. Might be a challenge. This is the Wells Report. I am John David Wells. Former President Donald Trump was talking on Fox News. He did this yesterday, and he said something that may pique your interest. He said that he would deploy military assets to fight the fentanyl crisis and, quote, inflict maximum damage, unquote, on a cartel operations if he was elected in 2024. He would also seek a law that provides for the death penalty to convicted drug dealers and human traffickers. Trump outlined his proposed policies for ending drug addiction in America in a new campaign video obtained by Fox News Digital on Thursday. For 3 decades before my election, drug overdose deaths increased every single year. Under my leadership, we took the drug and fentanyl crisis head on. We achieved the first reduction in overdose deaths in more than 30 years. Sadly, under Joe Biden, our hard-won progress has been surrendered, along with the surrender of our southern border. Such a shame. Now, fentanyl and other ultra-deadly poisons are pouring into our country unchecked, stealing more than 100,000 American lives every single year. So how many people die of fentanyl and drug overdoses thanks to the southern border being open versus people who are killed with firearms? The answer is more people are dying of fentanyl poisoning than gun violence. What are we doing about it? Nothing. Nothing. Why? Well, because you don't get to apply totalitarian law to the people of the United States if you stop fentanyl from coming over. If you stop people actually being able to defend themselves from an overarching tyrannical government, well, that kind of screws up their agenda. But people dying of drugs, no big deal. Fewer people to pay on Social Security reduces the debt. Yeah. Trump slammed Biden, saying his record is one of death, destruction, and misery in communities across our nation. When I'm back in the White House, I will take action on day one to end this horrific plague and save American lives. Joe Biden will never solve the drug overdose crisis because he's actively destroying our border. Trump said he would impose a full naval embargo on drug cartels, would deploy military assets to take on cartel operations, while insisting on the full cooperation of neighboring governments to dismantle the trafficking and smuggling network in the region. I don't have any idea why the country of Mexico is allowed to manufacture fentanyl and then allows its smuggling into the United States. I have no idea why that's happening. There are only 4 reasons. There are only 4 reasons why the border is open. There are only 4. Because 1, you are a proponent of or a consumer of deadly drugs crossing the border. 2, you are a proponent of or an enabler of the human sex trade and human smuggling trade. 3, you are someone who has no problem whatsoever with terrorists being infiltrating our country and waiting to do the work that, started this broadcast in 2001. Remember the 9/11 attacks? It was in all the papers. And there's only one more reason why the southern border is open. And that's because you're on a cartel payroll. Those are the only reasons. So why do we continue to allow it? Because we don't take these people out of power. We, the people. In addition to pushing Congress to impose the death penalty on drug dealers and human traffickers, Donald Trump said he would direct the U.S. law enforcement agencies to take down gangs and organized street crime that distribute narcotics at the local level. They are killing our people, poisoning our beautiful children. He said he would permanently designate fentanyl as a federally controlled substance, warned China that it would pay a steep price if it does not clamp down on the export of fentanyl precursor chemicals. I had a deal worked out with President Xi, said Trump. They weren't going to be sending any more. They were going to impose the death penalty on those that made it in China. During the administration, Trump negotiated a deal with Beijing to crack down on the production of those precursors. Trump slammed President Biden for walking away from that agreement. Attacking the supply of these deadly drugs will be just the beginning. It would, and then he said he would help strengthen the pillars that give life meaning and for those struggling with addiction. In particular, work, faith, and family. Trump's proposals include the expansion of federal support for faith-based counseling, treatment, and recovery programs for drug users. You can read more about that in Fox News. I suggest that you do. Thanks very much for joining us on the Wells Report today. Good show. Hope you share it with your friends. Support the show on Patreon if you can. And I'll see you tomorrow for the Friday edition of the Wells Report. Until then, God bless you and yours. See you tomorrow. All right. So there you go. All right. I'll see you tomorrow. I've got a lot of stuff to do, and I got to get